Hey guys, what's going on? It's Ben here, and today I'm going to be doing a video about the Denver Nuggets, and particularly a very short era in Denver that went on in the mid-2000s. It was supposed to lead them to the finals, and they were supposed to be a perennial contender from here on with this acquisition, but really it flamed out pretty quick. And today I'm going to be just going over why this era didn't work in Denver and what the reasons for not necessarily the failure, just the disappointment were. If you don't know, the era I'm referring to is the Allen Iverson era, and when they acquired him, it was supposed to be game over. They had basically, beside LeBron, the best young scorer in the game, Carmelo, and you could argue even the best pure scorer in the game in Carmelo, who was a young player. And then you had a guy who was like a 5-time scoring champ in Allen Iverson, along with a former MVP, still in his prime, even though he was later in his prime, he was still in his prime. And you had a good cast of supporting people around them. Some would include people like Marcus Camby, who was a Defensive Player of the Year and a great defender, J.R. Smith, Kenyon Martin, just some other guys that were really good, Dene. So today I will be going over this team and basically why they didn't succeed as much as people thought that they would. So to just do a little bit of background, if you don't know, when Allen Iverson was on the Philadelphia 76ers, basically they were good for a while between about 1999 and 2004, and then after 2004 basically they lost a lot of key guys in free agency, and then so in 2004 to 2005 they were like average to mediocre, and then 05 to 06 they were just bad. And so then in the beginning of the 2006 to 2007 season, their resolution was basically to start over a little bit and change gears, and so they traded away Allen Iverson to the Denver Nuggets, essentially a swap of Andre Miller for Allen Iverson, basically straight up. And so then Allen Iverson, 15 games into the season, was a Denver Nugget. Now, something big for this team that isn't talked about in the 2006 to 7 season, which people may attribute to them not doing as well, I would contribute it to them not doing as well, is the absence of Kenyon Martin on this team. So he signed with the team in 2004 and played for them for a while. But in 2006 to 2007, that season, he missed almost the entire season with an injury. He only played 2 regular season games, and he did not play in the playoffs. So basically already one of their better defenders and just a consistent presence on the team was gone. Normally he'd be good for around like 13 points and 8 rebounds a game, and he was a former All-Star in 2004, so they were missing that presence during this season. But they did have Carmelo Anthony. This is the year that Marcus Camby won Defensive Player of the Year. For reference, he scored 11 points a game, had 12 rebounds a game, he had 1 steal a game, and he led the league in blocks at 3.3 a game. So they had Defensive Player of the Year, Marcus Camby. They had Carmelo averaging 29 points a game. And he was also averaging 6 rebounds and 4 assists a game. And then when you brought J.R. Smith was basically a 6th man. He was averaging 13 points a game, shooting well from the 3-point land, about 40%. He wasn't playing much. He was only playing 23 minutes a game, so that's pretty good to get 13 points in 23 minutes. And then AI, he was playing 42 minutes on average, which is crazy to think about. And he was averaging 25 points for them, along with 7 assists a game. So this was an interesting team. Oh, and they had Dene too, who was averaging 12 and 7 for them, 12.7 rebounds a game. But really, this team got a bad matchup in the playoffs in that they had to face the Spurs in the first round, and they did bad. They basically lost in 5 games, but I will give them the benefit of the doubt and attribute some of their struggles in this series to the lack of Kenyon Martin. They really didn't have much depth whatsoever. They only played, let's see here, basically 7 guys in the series. They started Carmelo, Steve Blake at point guard, Allen Iverson at shooting guard, and then I already said Carmelo at small forward, Nene at power forward, and Marcus Camby at center. And then they played I guess they played more like 8 guys, but J.R. Smith barely played in the series. He played 11 minutes a game because he was shooting terrible along with the other bench guys, and Eduardo Nájera and Lannis Kleza. They all shot terrible. Kleza shot 23% off the bench. Same for Eduardo Nájera, 23%. And then J.R. Smith shot 27% off the bench. So those guys, they really had no bench in this series and heavily played their starters. Carmelo was playing 42 minutes a night. Steve Blake, 36. Marcus Camby, 37. Nene, 36. And Allen Iverson, 45. And so really just they didn't have any depth, and one of their best starters was out in Kenyon Martin. You could say he was about their 4th best player after Melo, Iverson, and Camby. So he was out for all of this. So this team struggled a bit more. They had 45 wins this season, and they were the 6th seed. And basically with Allen Iverson getting traded there, they had to adjust a lot mid-season because he and Andre Miller play a lot different. Andre Miller is all about like distributing and stuff like that, and like not like averaging 10 points a game, but also like then 11 assists a game. Whereas Allen Iverson is more like averaging 26 a game, but then only dishing out like 5 to 7 assists a game. So a lot different. Allen Iverson's much more of a scorer and a points first, assists later guy, whereas Andre Miller, for those of you not familiar with him and not familiar with NBA history, he's sort of like Ricky Rubio is my best assessment for him right now. Probably like between 10 to 12 points a night and probably around like 10 assists a night. He was better than Ricky Rubio, so those numbers are a little bit higher than what Rubio would do, but that's generally what Andre Miller would be, and also really good at stealing the ball. But okay, moving on to the 2007 to 2008 season, which is the one in which they were supposed to do a lot better because Allen Iverson had been there for the full season. They had Kenyon Martin healthy and ready to play again, and basically they were just supposed to be a better team because they had that offseason to gel, and injuries weren't really supposed to be a problem, and Carmelo was supposed to develop more, and the team was just supposed to be ready to take the next step as far as being a real contender in the West. So looking at how the Nuggets actually performed during this season, as far as the standings go, they had a 50-win record, and honestly, they just got the raw end of the deal because the West was super competitive in this season. So 50 wins normally would be around like a 5th seed, and so then you'd have a chance of like beating the 4 and getting into the second round. But this Denver Nuggets team, despite having 50 wins, was the 8th seed, which is one of the few times in a conference when a 50-win team has been the 8th seed. And honestly, there was a lot of parity in the West because the 1 seed, the Lakers, had only 57 wins. So the 1 seed and the 8th seed were only decided by 7 games. I'll just read off really quick how close the standings were in the conference during this season. So the Lakers had 57 wins, Hornets had 56, Spurs 56, Jazz 54, Houston 55, the Suns had 55, Dallas had 51, and then Denver, the Nuggets, had only 50. But as you can see, the 1 seed and the 6th seed were decided by 2 games, which is crazy. As you can see, all these teams are like 55 wins, except for the Jazz, Dallas, and Denver. But even the Jazz had 54. But just basically, everybody was a contender, and everybody had a legit shot of going far in the playoffs. So Denver almost got the raw end of the deal in this season because the year that they were ready to gear up and do really well was the year that everybody else apparently was too. And even if you look at the teams outside the playoffs, Portland was 500 at 41-41, and Golden State was coming off of that good season of the We Believe Warriors, and they had 48 wins. So Denver almost didn't even make the playoffs this year because it was so competitive in the West. In the first year, or in the playoffs, excuse me, they matched up with the Lakers, which was just sort of like a tough matchup in the first round. You had the Lakers with Gasol and Kobe was having his MVP season in which he was doing really well, leading the Lakers, doing a very good job. And Powell was considerably better than anyone. You know, you might say that Denver had a good neutralizer in Marcus Camby, But Powell is actually taller than Marcus Camby, who is 6'11". Powell is 7 feet, so it's harder to block a guy that's taller than you. And as good as Marcus Camby was, I think Powell was just about his equal on. As good as Camby was on defense, I think Powell was better on offense, because this is Powell like in his best season, like right in his prime of his career. So he's at the height of his powers athletically and as far as his skill goes. So really, Camby wasn't enough to completely neutralize Pau Gasol. And then they didn't really have an answer for Kobe because they didn't really have any good wing defenders. But before we get into all the playoff stuff, let's quickly look at the regular season statistics for the Denver Nuggets, just to get an idea for how they were doing. So looking at the regular season stats, you had Allen Iverson leading the team in scoring at 26 points a game. He was taking 19 shots a game, shooting 46%. Carmelo was right behind him, averaging like a half a point less than him, like a little below 26 points a game. He was shooting 19 shots a game as well, on 49% shooting. Marcus Camby was the really big defensive anchor in the middle. He was averaging 9 points a game, 13 rebounds, and a little under 4 blocks a game. Kenyon Martin was back to being healthy, averaging 12 and 7, 12 points, 7 rebounds. And then J.R. Smith was their main guy off the bench, only playing 19 points a game, but getting 12 points, which is good. And then they had Anthony Carter starting just because they didn't want Allen Iverson to have to play point guard. Carter didn't do much, averaged 8 points a game and 6 assists. And then Lance Clay's off the bench as their other main bench guy with 11 points a game in 24 minutes. And Nene really wasn't much of a factor on this team because he was injured for most of the season and didn't play in the playoffs. He only played 16 games and 16 minutes a night, averaging 5 points and 5 points, 5 rebounds. So Nene really largely a non-factor on this team. So those were the regular season stats. The thing that really sticks out to me is that Allen Iverson was taking as many shots as Carmelo Anthony. At this point in their careers, Iverson is 32, Melo's 23. Iverson I know for sure he had an ego, and he thought, I'm a former MVP, I'm a scoring champ, I should be getting just as many touches and being the primary scorer on this team. But the problem was, at this point in each of their careers, Carmelo was really the better scorer. Iverson was a 6-foot tall guy, maybe shorter. He relied on athleticism and getting to the rim, and in older age he really couldn't do that as well because your explosiveness and athleticism leave you, not completely, but a lot of it goes away, and you have to rely more on like your jump shot and stuff like that. And he was only shooting 34% from 3, only taking 3 3-pointers a game. So really an outside shot was not really a part of his game. But he still was taking the 19 shots a game and shooting 46%, which is worse than Carmelo. So it really makes me think, and maybe you guys think, that man, he really shouldn't have been shooting as much as he was. Maybe get a guy like J.R. Smith a few more shots, or Kenyon Martin, and just I think that in this season Iverson should have been averaging more like 21 points a game, but because he was so stubborn to be the offensive focal point, he may have made the team a little bit worse by forcing the ball into his hands and making sure he was the leading scorer and getting equal shots to Carmelo Anthony, when Carmelo Anthony was really the better pure scorer and could score in more ways, more versatile, and really should have been Iverson, or it should have been Melo as the 1 and Iverson as the clear 2, but because Iverson really just couldn't give up control of running an offense, it was like Iverson 1A, Melo 1B, unfortunately, or flip-flop those if you think Carmelo was a little more in control. But Iverson's lack of being able to accept his aging and his real state of play in the NBA, that really hindered this team, in that he wasn't willing to adapt and help the team win. He was more interested in, I want to be the star of the team, which ultimately won't help a team do well. That being said, let's go look at how they did in the playoffs. They were outed in a clean sweep by the Lakers, who just had a better team overall. In the playoffs, Carmelo averaged 22 shots a game and scored 22 points a game. Iverson was averaging a little under 25 points a game on 21 shots a game. And then besides that, you had Marcus Camby, who was playing center for them, putting up around the same numbers: 3 points a game, 13 rebounds, 3 blocks a game. Kleza coming off the bench, or actually starting a bit more in this series, playing 30 minutes a game and averaging 14 points. And then J.R. Smith playing significantly more, around 30 minutes a night off the bench, and he was averaging 18 points a game for them. Kenyon Martin, a little underwhelming. He's starting for them at power forward, but only averaging 9 points a game, although this could be attributed to J.R. Smith playing more and getting a lot more shots, because if you look at J.R. Smith's average field goals, he was shooting 11 a game in the playoffs, whereas in the regular season, he was only shooting, let's see here, he was only shooting 9 a game, so shooting 2 more shots. And then Lennox Kleza shooting a bit more too. Kleza was shooting 8 shots in the regular season, and that was up to 10 in the playoffs. And so Kenyon Martin's shots were being taken from him a little bit. But yeah, he was a little underwhelming. And I think this team really missed Nene this season. He was a guy who was solid for them off the bench, brought a lot of good size if they wanted to go big, which the Lakers like to do. So it would have been good for the Nuggets to do, in that they... And honestly, with Andrew Bynum out, or he wasn't out, he was still playing. So having Nene, Andrew Bynum was out for the finals, but having Nene for the bout versus the Lakers could have been good, because you could put Camby on Gasol, and then you could put Nene on Bynum, and it's not like the Lakers would have a physical advantage at that point then. But really what I noticed from this team overall, just why they didn't do well, is like a real lack of depth. You've got their starters. Their basic starters would be, or I'm not even going to say starters, because I don't really think you can count on a guy like Anthony Carter. So I'll just say their main guys were Iverson, Carmelo, Camby, Martin, and then because Nene was out, you can't really count him. So then I'd say J.R. Smith was their other main guy, those 5. And then I guess you'd say Lennox Kleza too. So 6 guys basically that they were counting on to be good on this team. And really, when the team just didn't have much balance, you know, I think the team would have been better off if you had Carmelo scoring 26 a game, limit Iverson's shots a bit more, have him score more like 20 a game, and then give more opportunities to guys like J.R. Smith and Martin, and even Marcus Camby a little bit more on offense, and Lennox Kleza, because I think the problem was, come playoff time, they're so Melo and Iverson are so high usage that the other guys can see their offense shrink as a result, and it can just become all Carmelo Anthony and Allen Iverson, and that was really a problem for this team. And when those guys then aren't hitting, the other guys aren't in rhythm enough to do good on offense. You look at some of these guys' shooting percentages, and they are just awful in the playoffs. Iverson was okay. He was at 43%. Melo was bad. He was at 36%. Marcus Camby wasn't only taking 5 shots a game, but he was only hitting 1 of them. He was shooting 23%. Okay, he was hitting a little over 1 in that case then, but 23% from the field, not good at all. And then some of the role players like Kleza and J.R. Smith were hitting well from the field, but when Iverson and Melo are accounting for 43 shots a game, it really doesn't matter what other guys do, because they're basically coming up with half the offense. And when those guys combined are shooting like 39% from the field, you're not going to succeed. And that being said, I'm going to break down why this team didn't succeed into basically three reasons. Number 1, they had injury problems. 2006 to 7, they were missing a key starter, arguably their fourth or third best player, depending on how I see it, in Kenyon Martin. So they were missing him for all of 2006 to 2007. And then 2007 to 2008, they were missing one of their key bench guys in Nene. He really would have changed things in the Lakers series when they could go big versus Bynum and Gasol and not be bullied as much. I feel like Martin on Bynum, or let's see here. Martin trying to cover Bynum is a lot harder, considering Martin is 6'9" and Bynum is 7 feet. So that just creates a mismatch right there that Nene could have helped stop. So that's basically reason number one is just injury problems and the bad luck of injuries. Reason number two why this team didn't succeed as much as they should have is that it just so happened that they formed this team at like about the same time the West really loaded up as far as contenders. So like the Warriors, let's just take for instance, they were not a competitive team during the 2000s really for the most part. But basically the 1 year that they decided to have like a really pretty good record and be a winning team and go for it was 2007 to 8, the main year the Nuggets were trying to do the same. And so that adds another team to the talent pool of being a contender. And then you just look at this Western Conference. At this around the same time, the Jazz were starting to come up and improve with Deron Williams and becoming more of a contender. New Orleans had their best season of the 2000s, being the 2 seed and winning 56 games. The Lakers, who hadn't made the playoffs or had made the playoffs but were like the 8 seed the past 2 seasons, acquired Pau Gasol and really went for it. The Spurs are always pretty good. The Rockets put together their best season of the Yao Ming and Tracy McGrady era. Phoenix had been pretty consistently good, and Dallas as well. So really, there just wasn't a crack in the armor of this Western Conference, and it was just a really intense playoff race, and everybody was really good and really competitive. So Denver just naturally ran into a roadblock of basically having to compete with 8 other teams for 8 playoff spots, and that left Golden State as that team on the outside looking in. But really, Denver just had a hard time in that they basically just had to play a ton of really good teams all the time. Okay, and then the last point I'm going to make is probably the most fundamental problem of this team, and it's just basically the team structure after acquiring Allen Iverson. And I'll break this last point into 2 parts, which is number one, Allen Iverson was unwilling to relinquish his alpha dog, I shoot first mentality, where he wants to be the primary guy on the team. In 2007 to 2008, he was the leading scorer on the Nuggets, and I think most people can agree that at their respective stages in their career, it definitely should have been Carmelo Anthony who was the primary scorer on the team. And they were taking like an equal number of shots, and really Carmelo should have been taking more than Iverson. So basically just Iverson's unwillingness to relinquish control of shooting, which created a really limited offense, and that basically your offense was coming from 2 guys, and that hampered the team overall, and that they were much more easy to plan for and stop, because really if you stop those 2 guys or make them shoot bad shots, the team's going to lose. Okay, and so then the other part of that I want to address, this last point of their team structure, is that they just didn't have any depth. Like if they even would have had their guys healthy, they would have had 7 guys that you could really rely on to play, I'd say. Maybe 8, depending on how you feel about guys like Eduardo Nahara or Lance Kleza. But if they would have had Nene healthy even, their team would have looked like a core of Iverson, Carmelo, J.R. Smith, Kenyon Martin, Marcus Camby, that's 5. And then you would have had Nene and basically Lance Kleza as your guys. That's like 7 guys. There's just no depth to the team whatsoever. It's because they're so top heavy with Allen Iverson and Carmelo, and I don't know, there's not a great solution to that, because just the way things were structured, they were paying Iverson quite a bit of money. They were paying Kenyon Martin quite a bit of money to be nothing more than just a good starter. And so it's hard to be successful when your team is limited in that way, but that's just the reality of the situation. So to recap quick, the Nuggets were limited in their success because of injuries, because of a hyper-competitive conference, maybe the most competitive the conference has ever been. And then thirdly, their team structure, which was flawed because of Allen Iverson's score-first mentality and the lack of depth on the team. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. I know it was a bit longer, but it takes a little bit more to explain, and hope you guys have a good day. Bye.